Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously welcome back to the show. Today's episode 176 of the show, and before we get started, I'm going to do a bit of house cleaning quick because, well, you guys know I like to do it around here, and it only makes sense that we do it. So let's get on with the house cleaning. I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It really does mean a lot to me. You guys constantly take time out of your day to listen to these episodes, to share these episodes, to download them, and, just get to have a fun time with me, and I really appreciate it. And to be honest, you guys are great. You guys are wonderful, and I greatly appreciate all of you. So thank you so much for the support. I do want to say thank you for helping us hit over 2,500 total downloads. So I greatly appreciate that. Thank you guys. Well appreciated. As mentioned before, I do want to say thank you to the Patreon backers for supporting the show. You guys are great. Thank you guys for your support. I really appreciate you. And if you want to become a Patreon backer, then click the link down below and become a Patreon backer. You can either just donate $2 a month just to be like, hey, here's $2 a month, or, $5 a month and get early access to the episodes and stuff like that. But today, I'm just going to be honest. I'm cutting loose a little bit, and it's going to be more of a tech rant. Mainly because, yes, I get it. We're talking about the Nintendo Switch OLED, and it's one of those things where, yes, I understand that the majority of the internet is very decisive. It's kind of a polarizing topic to talk about because, yeah, the Nintendo Switch OLED isn't exactly what we were expecting. Yes, we knew ahead of time that there was going to be a new Switch model announced this year. Like, that was the expectation. The hope was that it was going to be the Switch Pro, because everyone was like, yes, we need a Switch Pro. We need a better Switch model that can handle the new games, or that can handle newer games and run them much better, much more effectively, much more efficiently. But it does make sense why we got what we got. If I'm being honest, I'm not super mad, especially given the context of what's going on. I'm still disappointed that we're seeing the same usual trend of Nintendo lovers or the Nintendo Knights always just supporting everything Nintendo does. They pretend like Nintendo doesn't do anything bad. And to me, it's just like, this is a clear example of them, being tone deaf as usual, because let's be honest, while Nintendo does have one of the best game catalogs, ever, let's be real, they have incredible games. We're not going to pretend like their franchises or IPs are not good or well received and well liked, but we have to be honest that yes, Nintendo is not the best when it comes to some business practices. We have to be very clear about this, because let's be honest, they're not the most consumer friendly. They probably couldn't give a rat's butt cheeks about you. However, this situation specifically with the OLED, I do believe that it was rushed. This is my firm belief that I think even a lot of people that can agree, people that don't like the Nintendo Switch OLED, or at least, why it exists, that yes, I do believe they just rushed it out just to get a new console on the market, to hype up buzz. But this isn't the right way to go about it. And here's what I'm explaining. What are the main updates that came with the Nintendo Switch OLED? The only updates that we know officially and that are confirmed are obviously the new 7-inch OLED display. So it's going to have an OLED in handheld. And at the same time, it's going to have an Ethernet port on the jack, or on the dock specifically, which I still think it should have been with the original Switch instead of buying that stupid adapter. But I think it's cool that, hey, we finally get it. But still, this should have been something that was on the original, because it doesn't make much sense. And at the same time, they're doubling the base storage, even though nobody really cares about the base storage of this thing, because everyone just buys a nice SD card and then we all move on with our lives. I think also the new kickstand is better given the original Switch's kickstand is kind of dog. Let's be honest here, it's kind of boo-boo. I think we can all agree it's pretty bad, and we're not going to pretend like it's good. And that's pretty much it. That's all we got updates. We didn't get a newer processor. We didn't get, more. Well, I wouldn't say the base storage could have been more, but let's be honest here. They didn't really do much. They didn't add Bluetooth capabilities built into it where it can connect headphones like Bluetooth headphones. So yes, if you like me, I have a little adapter for my Nintendo Switch so I can connect my Bluetooth headphones like my SteelSeries Arctis 9X's or my AirPods. And it's still weird that they didn't include that built in. I think that would have been that would have been something cool to include, was a proper Bluetooth receiver to actually, use Bluetooth devices would have been actually, useful. But here's where we're at. The reason I feel like it is rushed is, yes, in today's current society and how things are right now, yes, we are currently in the middle of a chip shortage. I do firmly believe that the Nintendo Switch OLED was supposed to be better than what it was. I do firmly believe that this was supposed to have a new processor. I do believe that this really was supposed to be the Switch Pro that everyone's been wanting. Better display, better horsepower. But given the chip shortages that, to be honest, if you've been keeping up with the news, the chip shortage will probably go until 2023. And that's kind of rough given that, there's a lot of new hardware that needs processors. Cars need, like, if you don't believe me, cars actually do need processors, which, that's why the chip shortage kind of sucks for, people in the car industry because, hey, we can't really make new cars without chips and stuff. But it's one of those things where they literally just rushed it out just to say they haven't, be like, hey, there you go. We got a new Switch model. You guys got what you wanted. But when you take a step back, it's like, how does it really fit in the lineup? Because it's like, think about it. They promote this as a new home, as a docked, Switch. It's promoted as, hey, you can get a new OLED. But to me, it's like, why would you combine these two things when it doesn't make much sense to do it? You get what I'm saying? Like, if you want a better handheld Switch, then you would buy the Switch Lite because it's, designed to be handheld. Like, if the whole premise of the Switch OLED was to be like, hey, we got this new OLED display to use in handheld, I'm like, well, that's great. It doesn't feel that good in the hands no matter which way you try to spin it. Like, I'm not being mean, but the Switch itself is pretty uncomfortable when you try to handhold it. Except the Switch Lite. I think that's actually a little bit more comfortable. But the regular Switch, when you try to handhold it, it's not the most comfortable thing. That's why people buy grips for it. But to me, it's like, why would you care to use it in handheld when most people, like, they want a handheld, they just buy the Lite. That's why the Lite was made, because there's people like, hey, I want the Switch to primarily use it in handheld, so they buy the Lite. Or, hey, most people just buy the docked one because, like, hey, I'm mainly going to use it at home. I'm not going to take this off the dock. It's just going to stay on my dock so I can play my games at home. And to me, it's just like, the chip shortage definitely hurt the OLED. I'm just being honest here. It really did, because this should have been the Pro. This should have been the big Switch refresh that everybody wanted, because a lot of people were clamoring and asking for Nintendo. Look, the Switch is 5 years old now. You admitted it in your presentation. It is not handling games the way it is. Like, it's showing its age. It's 5 years old. It's not going to handle the newer games. And yes, there's only so much you can do with optimizations. There's only so much you can do with, just plain optimization. Like, it needs more power. There's a reason why the Series X and the PS5, yes, people can optimize games for them, but they also have more power and more headroom to be like, okay, yes, we have optimization. We also have a little bit more power that can, run these games better than what they what they did before. With the Switch, all we got is a new OLED display, but that doesn't really change how we run a lot of our games. And let's be honest here, it needs more power. That's just the reality, because if Nintendo can't update the processor in the Switch, it's not going to keep getting the big flagship AAA games that people want to play on it. And even a lot of Nintendo's like homegrown games. Let's be honest here. I'm very concerned with how the Breath of the Wild 2 is going to run on this thing. Like, it's gonna be a bit of a concern to see how it runs. Like, Monster Hunter Rise, one of my favorite games on the Switch. I do agree it needs more power. I think running it at 60 FPS should have been the minimum. I really think that the Switch needs more power to run those games a lot better. And I get it. Nintendo's like, look, we don't want to differentiate our fan base. There's some people that don't care about the power. And I'm like, well, you can't say they don't care when it's kind of sad when at least a mid-range smartphone can perform much better than the Switch. That's saying a lot, in terms of how mobile smartphones have, come as times, have come as, time has gone on. Like, they've gotten so much better. They've gotten much more powerful, much more efficient. And it's just like, bro, come on. Like, we need more power for the Switch. I know the Nintendo Knights are going to be like, well, we don't care about horsepower. We like their games. We like having our good games. Well, that's great, but what if I told you your games could run better and you would like them even more if they ran better? Like, I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings, but optimization can only go so far. And I get it, when the Switch came out, it was better. Like, it still was a good console because I liked it, because I bought it, like, it was my graduation gift from high school. That's why I got it. But what people really wanted was, hey, the Switch Pro should have at least given us PS4 level performance and handheld, because people would be happy with that. I guarantee you people would be happy with that. Optimizations would be better, because what we really wanted is 1080p handheld. That's where I feel like the OLED would have been great, because let's be honest, 720p OLED is not going to look good. It is going to look garbage as it normally does, because let's be honest here, OLED does not really like that low of a resolution. I think a 1080p OLED would have been much better than, say, a 720p OLED that we're getting. Let's be honest here. Like, one of my friends made a joke. He was like, bro, let's be honest here. I get to enjoy Monster Hunter Rise on a nice OLED so I can see all those ugly imperfections in clear 720. I'm like, yeah, he has a point. Like, it's one of those things where it doesn't make much sense to make a 720p OLED handheld. Heck, they didn't even address the Joy-Con drift issue. And I know that's a big deal too, because that's what people wanted, was Nintendo to do a refresh and be like, hey, we get it. The Joy-Cons are, it's a nice little gimmick. The problem is, yes, they're also extremely small. They're very fragile. They're super expensive for what they should be. Like, I get it, the whole HD rumble and everything. But like, bro, Joy-Con drift is a pretty big issue, and it makes sense because these are tiny controllers. And they're not meant to last a long time. Like, that's why I tell people, just buy a Pro. Like, if you are buying a Switch, the Pro controller is a must buy no matter what way you try to spin it. You must have a Pro controller. No matter what, you must have a Pro controller. It is a must have buy for every Nintendo Switch owner. The Pro controller is great. It's one of my favorite controllers ever made. And that's saying a lot given how much I like the 360 controller and how much I like my Elite Series 2 controller for my Xbox. But to me, the Pro controller is just a fun, like, it's my favorite controller. I love using it. It's one of the most comfortable controllers in my hand. But I do believe the Joy-Cons needed a refresh, and I think it's sad that Nintendo still has been a bit stubborn when it comes to Joy-Cons. Like, guys, we get it. It's the thing you try to hammer home and everything. It's a nice, obviously Joy-Con boys. Everyone remembers Etika, like, always hyping it up. But to me, it just feels like the Switch OLED is rushed. It definitely feels like, look, they just did this just to get the nice holiday sales, the nice holiday bump. We know we got a new Metroid coming, which I still think, like, it's okay. Like, I get it. It's the first mainline Metroid game we've had in a long time, but I just don't care. I'm just being honest. I really don't care. I'm also being honest that we have a lot of games on the Switch that need a performance bump. It's just the cold, hard reality. Like, it's not funny anymore. Like, the Switch is definitely showing its age. It needs more power. I know Nintendo's like, look, we're just trying to provide great quality games. We don't really care about trying to compete with performance. And I'm like, guys, you have to compete with performance. This is brain dead thinking. Like, you have to compete with your competition. Your competition is making great games, and they got better hardware now. They're going to run those games a lot. Like, people wanted a 4K Switch with DLSS 2.0. Like, they wanted a Switch that can truly run 4K. which given how DLSS 2.0 is right now, hey man, the Switch could have done it if it had a better Integra chip. But given the chip shortage, obviously we can't have that because there's a chip shortage. And if the Switch sells the way that it does, that's not really going to do us any favors with how quickly it's going to sell out. Like if you told consumers, we have a new Switch, it has an OLED display, a newer processor, it will run games at 4K and docked, people would literally lose their absolute minds and they would be buying this thing up like hotcakes. Because think about it. If they did put the new processor and everything and it was like the same price, like $350, dude, this thing would have been sold out before you could even say, holy crap. Like it would have been gone because everybody and their mother would be buying. Like the market would be filled with people selling their Switches being like, look, just sold it, you know, here's all my like anything that they don't want with it. You know, obviously if you have a Pro controller, you're not going to sell that, you're going to keep it and be like, suck my nuts. But it's one of those things where man, Nintendo really dropped the ball with it. And I don't think it's good either that Nintendo fans keep trying to justify it. Like it doesn't make much sense why you're trying to justify this bull. Like my brain cannot begin to wrap itself around the idea of justifying a clearly rush to market product that doesn't really change how you use it. It's being advertised as a new Switch, like it's part of the lineup, and I'm like, dude, no, it doesn't make any sense in its own lineup. Like you already have a handheld Switch. It's the Lite. Like why would I want to use the OLED in handheld when I can literally use the Lite and get a better grip and everything? Like it doesn't make much sense. Like it's jarring. And granted, the dock, I get it. They said that you can buy the dock separately, and to be honest, I might just because I want the Ethernet port. But to me, it's just like Nintendo has shown how brain dead they can be and that they truly just don't care. Like I always say, Nintendo likes to make one good step forward and then at least 20 steps backwards. Like that's just how Nintendo operates. Because with crap like this, bro, what do you want me to say? Like you want me to say, good job, Nintendo, you guys are great, you guys are amazing, you did everything right? No, they're extremely brain dead and tone deaf. That's just the cold hard reality with all this, is they're just so tone deaf to their audience that it's not even funny. And there's still people justifying this. There's people like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy an OLED day one, and I'm like, I'm not. Like if this was the true Pro upgrade that I thought it was, I was like, bro, I'm ready to shell out $350 right now. Like I don't care. But it's one of those things where it's just sad that this is where we're at. Like we wanted a new Switch. It's been 5 years. We needed a refresh. And it's just like, this is not the refresh we needed. We did not, no one cares about the OLED. What people really cared about was better performance. That's what the Switch really and desperately needs, is better performance. I don't care who you are. I don't care what games you play. It needs better performance. It will not be able to handle newer games if it does not have better performance, because companies will not be able to port their games over. I don't care what kind of optimizations they do. It will not look good. It will not run good. Like, I get it. The Switch has a track record of amazing optimizations like Warframe or Doom Eternal, or like games that have been so optimized that it's mind-boggling how they made it work. But still, it needs better performance. Like the Switch desperately needs better performance. It should be unacceptable that this thing only runs 1080p in handheld and docked mode specifically, and you know, even in handheld the struggle is even running 720p at 30. Like it's just like, bro, this is so mind-boggling. It's so like no one's asking for like 4K 120 on, no, we're asking just give us 1080p 60 in docked mode. And even then, it gives us 1080p 30 and it can barely handle that sometimes. Like there's some games that just brick and they run at like 15 to 1p. Like, oh my lord. Like it's just like, don't even get me started with the whole thing with the games coming like Pokemon Arceus and stuff like that. Like, bro, that game's probably gonna run at like 10p. It's just like, oh no. Like Nintendo desperately needs more performance on the Switch. Like I'm just mind-bogged. My brain is still just trying to wrap itself around the idea that they still don't listen to what they desperately need is more performance. Like, I'm not saying it fixes all their problems. Nintendo has great games. You need more power. I don't care what you try to say, what kind of, jargon you want to try to smooth talk the fan base with. You need better performance. We're not asking for you to compete with the Xbox Series X and PS5. We're asking you to give us performance that should be bare minimum. If a smartphone can do it, a home console / mobile console could do it too. You just don't want to do it because you're lazy. Like, I get it, the chip shortage isn't helping either, and I'm not saying like Nintendo has control over that, but still, like, you could have given us more performance. You could have, but you didn't. Like, it's just one of those things where I don't think the Switch OLED should come out this year. I don't even think it should exist right now. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it is for people that it's their first time buying a Switch, okay, I could see an argument saying that, yeah, it'd be the better one to buy. But if you're a current Switch owner, you have no reason to upgrade. You have zero to no reason to upgrade. And if you try to justify upgrading it, I'm sorry, you are literally pure delusional to try to upgrade it, to try to justify upgrading to this thing. Because there's no upgrade. What do you gain? Like, who cares about extra base storage? You have an SD card for a reason. Like, no one cares. The dock, you can just go buy it. Like, to be honest, the dock is the most worthwhile thing ever. Like, my idea for the Switch Pro that I thought of was something Microsoft did a while back with the first Surface Book, where the display has a processor and RAM and everything inside of it, but then and a GPU, like a small GPU, and the keyboard, when you connect it, it has more, another GPU, more horsepower inside of it. So when you put them together, it unlocks the true potential. And I was like, well, what if Nintendo did that? They, put a good processor in for the handheld mode, but then the dock also has a processor and gives it. So when you put them both together, it truly bumps up the power so that, there's more power. Granted, that's too big brain thinking for Nintendo, because let's be honest here, they don't like to think outside the box anymore with a lot of things. But at the end of the day, this is what we got. Am I happy about it? No. I'm just being honest with you. I think the Switch OLED is dumb. I think it shouldn't exist. Like, I get it. This would have been the Pro if the chip shortage wasn't going on. I get it. I fully understand that that's realistically what happened. Was the chip shortage definitely screwed them, and they're like, hey, slap the OLED on there. We just need to get a new Switch out on the market so we can say we have a refresh. I still think it's not worth it. I don't care who you try to justify. Like, if you're a new buyer, hey man, go for it. If you've never bought a Switch before and you really wanted one, then I'd say the OLED's probably your best bet. But at the end of the day, there's still so much left on the table. I'm just like, Nintendo, you could have done more. And I know I'm sounding overly negative. I know that I sound like, Josh is just bashing Nintendo. And I'm like, no, but we have to be critical, because we can't just, give these companies a nice little slap on the wrist and be like, oh, it's okay, you did your best. Like, no. Like, dude, if you want someone to shell out $350, you better give me something worth my money. Like, that's $350, bro. That stuff doesn't just grow on trees. If you go, like, it doesn't. And it's just like, man, this is where we're at. And hopefully, maybe later down the line, the hopes and the dreams of the Switch Pro aren't dead, and that, once the chip shortage finally clears up, then hey, we can finally get the true Switch Pro. But until then, guys, I don't know what else to tell you. To be honest, I don't think it's worth buying it. If you buy it, hey man, you do you with your own money. I just don't think it's worth it. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Hit me up on my social medias, what you guys think. I greatly appreciate your time, guys. Like, I know I ranted a lot, because that's pretty much the whole point of this episode, was just a little tech rant. But I really do appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to listen to me, to allow me to have a piece of your day, have a little piece of your time, because time is a very precious thing. It's not something that you can just give back, and to me, I really appreciate that you allowed me to share some of it with you. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I hope you guys continue to be safe out there. Please don't do anything dumb, guys. Please continue to be mindful and respectful of all those around you, because the world is still a weird place. People are still weird. I would just, try to be kind and respectful to everyone. Like, try to be more understanding of where everyone's coming from, and just, be more relatable. But thank you guys so much for your time. I love you guys to death. Please have yourselves a wonderful week and then a weekend. And as always, guys, don't do anything dumb. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.